Ja, gerne.
Hallo, einen schönen guten Abend. Hallo, guten Abend, Ralf Knobloch hier, Blockchain Meetup Saxony.
Hallo zusammen, freue mich dabei zu sein.
Ja, guten Tag, hallo und herzlich willkommen. Es kann sein, dass wir heute auch ein paar englischsprachige Mithörer mit Zuschauer haben. Therefore, I will ask into the chat in YouTube. Should we speak in English or can we speak in German? If we receive one feedback in the YouTube channel, then we can switch to English. There's no problem. But this is a question. We need the feedback from our potential customers in the YouTube channel. Yeah. I think English would be good. Okay. So then I think we should go forward with English, and Arno, I will give you back to the explanation of the organization slides. Ich die Präsentation übernehmen? Ach ja. Ja. Yeah. It's clear. Okay, we go forward in English. Yep. This is our blockchain meetup Saxony organization slide. We are 6 organizers. I founded this meetup. And if you want to connect with us into the Slack, this is the address of join us on Slack, http://bc-saxony-herokuapp.com, or you can find us also in the meetup under this address, blockchain meetup Saxony. If you go to meeting meetup.com, then you should also look search only on blockchain meetup Saxony, and you will find our meetup page. We can to the next one slide. Okay. Today, the next slide, please. Yeah, today, normally on the beginning of all of our meetups, we are asking, or we made a short introduction review, what has happened since the last meetup. Our last meetup, what a quarter before, means in November last year, on the beginning of November. And we have now here a short overview about the news of the last 12 weeks. We have received a new release of Bitcoin Core, and there are some real new functionalities. On example, the newest functionalities, descriptor wallet, privacy preserving, and we have all Bitcoin improvement implemented. This is a Bitcoin improvement 120.07. And yeah, this new functionality is very important. Over 600 different merge request means requirements are in this release. And I think all of the new functionality, you need not so much calculation power to calculate all the things on the whole chain. They have reduced the computation consensus model a little bit, and yeah, this is also very important. And the next news, what we have seen in the last week, a new star was born on the crypto space. It's number 0 in coinmarketcap.com. These are the Wall Street bets. Everybody of you, I think, has heard something about GameStop, where a subreddit community has arranged or has a fight with one or two hedge funds, and it seems it's very interesting. So I hope that our political leaders or financial leaders will thinking about such financial products like squeeze or short selling and anything else. You can sell things what you don't own. It's unbelievable, and these are here is although a retail a subreddit community has used here or has started a fight against a hedge fund. So means coin market cap here, it's a joke. It's not really number 0. It's a joke from coin market cap, but it seems very interesting. Next slide. Yeah, it's not yet seen. The next slide is not switching. A little bit. Yeah. Oh, this was 2 slides. Can you go one back, please? Oh, it's missing. Okay. We have started normally Ethereum 2, but maybe we come back later. Today we had Ethereum has reached a new all-time high today, more than $2,500, and yeah, we see here we have also reached a market capitalization over 1 trillion, and the Bitcoin dominance, this is new, has a massive or was massive reduced to 61%, I think so. And yeah, this is also a new, from our perspective, it's a new, yeah, it's very new. The next one. And yeah, technical news regarding Ethereum. In December, in the beginning of December, the new beacon chain, this is the first phase or phase 0 of Ethereum version 2.1 was successfully started, and the most interesting thing from our technical perspective is in the December, in the beginning, they started with 27,000 validators. And actually, this chain, the beacon chain, has actually reached a quantity of 78,000 validators in the beacon chain. And you know, every validator, it's a staking mechanism, needs at least a deposit of 32 Ether. And actually, we have more than 2,500,000 Ethers staked in the beacon chain. And we have 12,000 pending validators. Pending validators are validators which will be come step by step where the quantity of validators will be increased. Actually, I don't know how many validators will increase day by day. I think between 700 and 900 a day. This means as much more validators you have.
Schatz, du musst mal bitte dem Karl jetzt erklären, dass genau jetzt die Zeit ist, wo ich nicht kann, ja?
Is your chain. So that you have a good consensus model, you have enough validators, and as this is the first time that a blockchain has reached such a high amount of validators. I think Bitcoin has not so much full nodes. I think in blockchain, in Bitcoin.
Ralf, I think my audio is back, so I hope everyone can hear me now. I checked the audio. Short confirmation, please, and then I can ask, maybe comment on your question about the full nodes in Bitcoin. Yeah, hey, great. And Ralf, we have around more than 20,000 full nodes in Bitcoin as well. The main problem for Bitcoin is in full nodes, we have a lot of them in Tor, so in the Tor network. So you cannot actually data mine exactly the number of all the full nodes.
Mhm.
And as you said in the slides with the recent Bitcoin core update, we are now also compatible with Tor version 3, which is even higher privacy. So thanks again for taking over my slide, Ralf. And
Yeah.
I maybe just want to add, because we are now in the technical stuff a little bit, besides the node network, which also was improved by the recent Bitcoin core update, we had an increase in privacy, of course, with Taproot and Schnorr signatures. Maybe some of you noticed in the last meetups that we talked about it already. And there is this scripted wallets. This is very interesting when we compare to Ethereum, because usually you have this UTXO set in Bitcoin where you need the private keys to say, okay, I want to spend the coins. And now with the Bitcoin core update from mid of January this year, you have some more ways to spend the coins, which is actually very nice because we are now more closer to all the nice multi-wallet and multi-signature wallet functionalities which Ethereum has. So just wanted to add this on the first Bitcoin news slide. And now,
Yeah.
Ralf, you
Okay.
can take over again.
Okay.
China is the next.
Yeah, I know China is the next, but I think this is also very interesting. You know, I'm very hot. What happens in China with blockchain? And I have seen that last week we had an announcement that
1, 2, 3.
Consensus is now a partner of China's blockchain service network. And Consensus has taken over Quorum from JP Morgan, and Quorum is Ethereum-based blockchain layer, but it is especially for CBDC payment layer and planned from Consensus. CBDC is a central bank digital currency. And yeah, what is, do you know blockchain services, the blockchain service network in China? The Chinese has rolled out and made so much progress in their universal solution to roll out together with their project Seidenstraße, the blockchain service network as international service and payment layer. And they have opened for this service network for Ethereum, EOS, Tezos, Neos, Nervous, and Algorand, and so on, the Oasis Foundation, Polkadot. And yeah, it's unbelievable what happens there. And I think we will in the future hear so much about the CDBC of China, the digital yuan, and also the new services which coming or will be a rollout about the world about the blockchain service network. And every big international city they will have blockchain service nodes, but here I think China, it's unbelievable what happens here in the last 6 months. Can we go to the next slide? This is also very interesting. This is my private interest to China. I had a student in the past, the master student, Junlin, and he has or sent me a book, and this book is completely a Chinese book. And in the last weeks, I read this very amazing book. With this book, the highest manager and leaders of China will educated actually on the highest education university in China. This is the University of the Communist People Party School in China. And this new book for this party leaders and industrial leaders in China has a content 350 pages only about blockchain and DLT. And I have translated it with Google Translator with a smartphone. I cannot speak and read Chinese, but it's very interesting. Here I have made an example where I have translated the cover book and in German, and it's unbelievable from my perspective. They described in this book the blockchain-based society operating system combined with artificial intelligence. And if only 50% happens of that what is described in this book, then I think it's China will be the #1 in blockchain, in central bank digital currencies, and will be or is now the world leader. But this is not only what they've written in this book is not only future description, it's partly reality. And I'm so impressed. I can recommend to read this book, everyone. And I can later on send a link where you can buy it. It's paperwork, it's not electronic, but yeah, I can recommend it. I'm very amazed about it.
Ralf, I think that's also a good moment to ask the ones which are in the stream if they also have some news, because I can like envision also your fascination with the China movement and the China progress in blockchains. But maybe we have also some people from the community or people who are watching, if they want to share also their fascination in some other topics. So feel free to just add your question in the chat, or you can, if you want it more private, go and wonder me and put your questions there. We have someone who's taking the questions, because since the audio was not working in the beginning, in the introduction, I was explaining we have in parallel to this YouTube live stream the option that you can go and wonder me, which is a private online virtual room, but it's more private. There's no stream, so you can discuss there more freely and open and place your questions there. So feel free to to just mind off what you think about the movement in the last 12 weeks, and then we maybe can discuss it if you want in the stream, or we will just stay with the YouTube chat. So sorry for the interruption, Ralf, but now let's talk about the Imperium Facebook.
Yeah, the Imperium strikes back. That's from Star Wars. Yes, Facebook means the Imperium. What happens with Libra? Libra was the former name of the Facebook coin, but now the new name is Diem. And yeah, is this who will win this race? Libra, China with its digital currency, Ripple as cross-border money transfer. We know that Ripple has actually some problems with the American SEC. On the other hand, it seems that the FINMA has supervised. The FINMA is a Swiss Financial Market Supervisor Authority. Has a certification made for, or an approval, regulatory approval made for Diem, but actually it's very, very nice about this. And maybe in the past we will have 2.7 billion people in the mankind which are Facebook users, and they can use Diem as exchange value money, or whatever we understand behind Diem. Okay, the next slide. Here, this is more a prediction or discussion.
Wait, Ralf. Do you really? So okay, this is like a very, very easy question for the community. It's about the prediction of the price.
Yes, that's what I want. Please send us in the channel, in the YouTube channel, what's your opinion? What will be the highest value of Bitcoin and or Ethereum in 2021? Maybe, what's your opinion? Will be $50 dollars, 75 kilo dollars, 100 kilo dollars, or maybe another value? What's your opinion?
I think we have to give some price. I mean, without the price, if no one wins, why should they give some price hint? So I don't know. We will see how many people are taking part of this question, and then we will release some prizes, I guess. A ledger or something for sure is in. Yeah. So
okay.
And also, is Ethereum price also, or just Bitcoin?
It's equal. If everybody who want to make a prediction can do it for Ethereum or any other cryptocurrency or DeFi, decentralized finance. Next slide, please. Decentralized finance is also a hype, but it's not longer a hype. Maybe it can be possible that decentralized finance will be the new normal in the future of money in the future. Or maybe DeFi can also change our understanding of money, or what we must or will understand, or what we will receive in the future as programmable money. In the same, this is much more or programmable money, although the central bank digital currency. You know, there are plans that different properties of money can be developed or can be attributed to the money. And yeah, here we have also a new size or a new property in the DeFi sector. This is a total value locked total value locked means is a description of how many US dollars are locked in all decentralized finance products. And we see in the last months, in the last 6 months, it's increasing. And now we have nearly between 28 and 29 billion dollars locked in DeFi products. And it's much more increasing. And the DeFi tokens increases more than in the last weeks, increases much more than the Bitcoin has increased. And the most of the DeFi tokens runs on Ethereum. I don't know, do we have a platform which runs not on Ethereum and DeFi token?
That's a good question.
It's a good question. Uniswap runs on Ethereum.
Uniswap, Balancer. You can, like, if someone wants to see the DeFi products, there is DeFi Pulse. And as far as I know, of course, all of them are Ethereum, but there are some without Ethereum. But I would say it's minor, very minor.
Okay. So we can go to the next slide. And here, economy of things. In the last months in Germany, I think we have announced some new foundation or a new foundation project. And what I present here, or what you can read here, these are announcements from the official website of Bosch. I was involved as in the last 2 or 3 years in different projects together with Bosch, and I've seen how much they make research internally regarding the economy of things, distributed ledger and governance models and so on. And it's very interesting that Bosch has more than 100 years of traditional industry in Germany, and what they are thinking about. They think the future of platform economy should not be the monopoly game of as less as big American or Chinese companies. They think decentralization are one base of the of the economy of things. Decentralization means not only decentralization in money and crypto money. Decentralization means also what you need for platforms. This is also about the exchange of value, crypto value or digital value in the internet is also the usage of identities. And with the usage of decentralized identities, and they can automate, they think they can and will automate industrial processes between companies. On example, if you exchange data,
5 Minuten noch.
if you actualize company master data, and so on. And this is a very, very interesting research project. I have worked as an external consultant in the Bosch area, and one result of the research of Bosch, or one of the results, is the foundation of a program where Bosch is a member, and this is the foundation of IDunion. And what IDunion is, and what this has to do with Bosch and digital identities. This is our main presentation of what we have today. We have only one presentation today. And now I will take over to Adrian Dirk. He is the member of IDunion, and he will give us a comprehensive introduction of what is IDunion, what are the use cases, what are the idea behind IDunion, and what is the future of IDunion, of digital identities. So I will give over to Adrian. Adrian, a very
Thank you,
warm
Ralf.
welcome.
What a perfect transition from the topic. And yes, you were talking already. That's a nice picture, by the way. I will talk a little bit about IDunion in general, what our project is all about, what our goals and principles are, how we approach the whole topic of digital identity. And it will roughly take half an hour, and then I will want to go into a Q&A session, so you have a chance to get to ask your questions. And before we start, I maybe introduce myself properly. So I'm 18 Dark, originally from Nuremberg, moved to Frankfurt quite a while ago, and I have a technical but also a business background, kind of combine these two worlds, and work at Main Incubator. Main Incubator is a research and development unit of Commerzbank. We are 100% subsidiary, and we do research and development beyond banking, I would say. So, but which also includes quantum computers, for example, what kind of impact do they have on the topic of finance, but also obviously identity, which is very important for us. But we also do venture capital funding and so on. And basically that's how it all started 4 years ago, where we took a deeper look into the whole topic of decentralized identity or decentralized identity schemes in general, in order to find out where's the market heading, what gonna be the solutions of tomorrow. And that's where we evaluated different identity concepts and found out that basically the whole topic of decentralized identity is majoring over time. And we conducted a first prototype then. And actually were found partners from the industry in Germany which were conducting the same kind of research on the same technology stack. So obviously it was a natural fit to collaborate, and instead of like building an own small ecosystem with your own company, which is obviously not possible, but instead like collaborating with other stakeholders within the ecosystem in order to form a holistic approach, and also include different stakeholders from the public and private sectors from the beginning. And that's what we did. Then I think we can jump into it actually, and move into the next slide. Do I see the slides here directly? No. Okay.
Adrian, you don't see the slides, but you can chat me the slides if you want. Like if you don't want to say it, or you say it. We have a small delay in the YouTube, so it's like 10-20 seconds delay.
That's the reason why I'm saying like I don't really see it myself, but it's fine. Before we go to the third slides where you see the stakeholders which are currently involved, I might share the history a little bit about our the innovation competition. So basically, when we conducted the first research and did pilots with or MVPs, so minimum viable products, so to say, with other stakeholders, we actually found ourselves that the German government introduced an innovation competition to the market, which is called Showcase Secure Digital Identities. And basically the government said, hey, we see the clear need to have new solutions for digital identity. And they said, okay, please come up with innovative approaches in order to solve that issue. And they wanted the consortia form from different stakeholders, so private and public stakeholders got together. There were 11 project descriptions, basically within a so-called competition phase, which was conducted during the half last year, so from August 2020 to end of 2021. To end of 2020, so half a year, and we were one out of these 11 projects. Then back we were called SSI for Germany, and SSI is an abbreviation for self-sovereign identity, die selbstbestimmte Identität in German. And now we rebranded ourselves to IDunion to represent the European scope of the project. And when you take a look into the different stakeholders which are currently included, you see us obviously as main incubator, we lead the consortia, but obviously there are other very many important stakeholders. For example, the Bundesdruckerei, which is the federal printing office in Germany. They don't only print the money, but also the digital, your physical pass. So they're a public stakeholders, and obviously a very important partner for us. Another very important partner is Technical University of Berlin. They obviously conduct a lot of research in an academic field, bring in a lot of use cases or organizational power. So we're really happy to have them as well. Another partner which was there from the beginning is Isatos. It's a company based in Langen, near to Frankfurt. They specialize on identity and access management, and are really specialists on that topic. Really good to have them because they bring a lot of technical knowledge as well. And then the fifth partner, which we're in the competition phase, main partner is Bosch. I think I don't really have to explain much about Bosch, really a global player in the IoT market and electronic devices. So I think that's clear for everybody. And all the other partners then were added during the last months, or were also involved as associated partners during the competition phase. And currently, the 15 which you see on top are the partners which are then hope to get funded from the government. I'm gonna explain that in more detail in a second. And then you have associated partners which are not funded financially, but within the project we treat everybody the same way. We don't really think it doesn't make sense to differentiate between like a funded partner and non-funded partner. For us, it doesn't really make a difference. And you see here Deutsche Bahn as well, the big railway company in Germany, ING Bank, which is from the Netherlands originally, but they're obviously very interested in that as well. The T-Labs, which is the innovation house, I would say, from Deutsche Telekom AG. We have the Institut für Internetsicherheit. So basically it's an institute for the cyber security measures, and is based off the University of or Westphalian University of Applied Science. Then we have GS1. They're a global player when it comes to standardization. So whenever you come up with a product, here's a chocolate, and you have a barcode here that's called the ETIN, the ETIN, and they standardize that globally. So they're very important non-for-profit stakeholder for us in order to get into the whole standardization stations of products. Then we have Spherity, which is also a technology provider and specialized on healthcare very much in our project. We have the city of Cologne, Siemens, which I don't have to explain as well. Yes, an identity provider from the also the financial sector. And then we have Bankverlag, which is a trust service provider. We have the Senate of Berlin and Berlin Partners, which are also a very important public stakeholder. We have the the Amt for Migration and Immigrants, also public stakeholder, and also public stakeholder is the Ministry of Economics, Innovation and Digitalization and Energy of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. They are leading our whole public sectors and the stakeholders. So we're really glad to have them as well. And apart from ING and Commerzbank, we have also Deutsche Bank as part of our consortia, Credit Reform, BWI, which is the IT provider for the military, and some other partners. I think it's not necessarily to go detail about all the partners, but let's start and talk about a little bit what we're actually doing. So in the second slide, you see that the whole...
One question, I'm missing Daimler and BMW.
We talk with them as well. They're somehow involved in the project, so I would not say that there is no connection at all, and we collaborate with them, but for now it's not something I can officially communicate. But we have a contact, and but they're not officially part of the project for now.
Mhm.
And so what is it? What are you doing? So we have a solution for identification, authentication, and authorization. So identification, the identification of a person, the authentication. So authenticate somebody when he comes again. Is it really the same person again? The classic example of authentication is a password. And then have authorization, so to grant somebody access or to enable somebody to do something. And that's something which resolve these three aspects. Then for who is it? The solution is for natural persons, individuals. It's for companies, institutions, and organizations, but also for things, so the whole IoT sector. And how do we do it? We do it with the concept of self-sovereign identity, which means that you as let's say an individual, you're able to actually have control of your identity in general. So the attributes, the credential which you get issued from a third party, you can actually control where they're supposed to be, where you want to store them, how you want to store them, how you want to share them with third parties, and how you want to interact with them. So generally, that's the idea, which will I explain in a second a little bit more. And then this whole concept is attribute based. So for example, we have the German ID, which contains a lot of attributes. This can be your name, your surname, your birth date, your place of birth. All of these different aspects are attributes of a credential, in that case, your pass. And you can share individual credentials with a third party. So you don't need to share the whole credential, for example, your whole ID or your whole bachelor certificate, if you just want to share a grade, a particular grade, or the university you're studying in, for example. Then it's decentral, meaning that the information which you hold as an individual itself is not stored on a cloud. I mean, you can store it on a cloud. Obviously, you have the option, but you don't need to. You can have a wallet, so an app on your phone, which contains these different credentials. And so your data is not necessarily stored on a single cloud provider or somewhere centrally. But maybe if you want, then this is obviously an option which you can do as well. And the whole infrastructure itself, which I will talk in a second a little bit more, is also decentral. Meaning that we host a decentralized network, also known as blockchain or DLT, distributed ledger technology. And for that, we use Hyperledger Indy. So it's not so easy to attack the network itself. It's also data protection friendly, meaning that on the network itself, we don't store any personally identifiable information. So I have information which relates about you as an individual is never stored on any decentralized ledger, for example, any blockchain. What we store on this ledger is the public keys, or rather the decentralized identifier of a public entity. So if you, let's take an example with the Commerce Bank, if the Commerce Bank wants to issue a credential to a customer, then this credential or this identifier is then put on the DLT infrastructure, so the verification is possible. Ralf, yeah, question?
Excuse me.
Okay. So it means that we are GDPR compliant. So we hope, obviously, that's something which in the end courts need to decide, and that's obviously dependent on a case-by-case level when it comes to decentralized infrastructure in general. So that's not something we can for now say, yeah, that's true. But in the end, we need to have a conversation with regulators and address these problems together within this ecosystem. And then it's also open source, meaning that we use open source frameworks, which we then use for the implementation of not only the network, but also the agents. So basically we have a network as a base layer infrastructure, and then we have different agents which you can use, software components for individuals or organizations, which are also based on open source infrastructure. In that case, it's Hyperledger Areas and the DITCOM protocol, which is very valuable for avoiding a vendor lock-in. So a vendor lock-in is a classic example where you say, okay, we use a certain product from a company, and once you use it, you have so much invested interest in this software that it's really difficult to switch to another product. These kind of switching costs create really a problem for the institutions or also the end consumer which use the product. But it should actually be possible to just take your data, export it, and then import it into another software environment or software which you want to use from a different vendor. So that's something which you want to, which we really see as a big selling point and a really important characteristics of the solution which we're building, that there's no vendor login. And for now, obviously, that's very German driven, but we have a clear European scope. Something I will talk in a second. But going for the next slide, we see how this whole system is kind of illustrated. So on the left side, you see different aspects in terms of devices. You can use your smartphone, you can use your desktop device, you can use it also on a cloud infrastructure. So whatever your needs are, you can just use a different hardware setup, whatever your needs are. And then you see this person, which obviously could be an IoT device as well, or an institution. But basically, let's take a natural person, which is the easiest one to explain. And you as a person, you own different credentials. Can be a passport, can be a driver license, your university degree, whatever. And all these credentials you can store in a wallet. This can be the Lissy wallet, which we do develop, but it can be any other wallet which you like to use, and which supports the standards which you build on. And then we have this trust triangle, which explains that you have an issuer of a certain information, you have the holder and the verifier. The issuer is then the institution which issues this kind of certificate. Obviously, in a university degree, there will be, for example, the Technical University of Berlin. Then I, as a holder, as an individual, I can possess this credential. Really, it's kind of similar to cryptocurrency wallets in that terms that that if you lose your key, you can also lose all the data if you don't do a really good backup. So that's something which you also need to address. But it also means that it's not possible for anybody to kind of just delete your data, for example. So you really store it on your device, on your behalf, and you control it. And then a third party, if it wants to see some information from you, for example, you want to open a bank account, the Commerce Bank or whatever other bank, they need to do a KYC, a know your customer process, which you obviously know from any cryptocurrency exchange platform you're using, probably, when it's not only swap. So there, obviously, you need to show this kind of credential, and within this KYC process, then you can only show them the required information, whatever information is then required within the KYC process. So the third party asks you as a verifier, hey, I want to see this information. And then you as an individual can say, okay, here, I got this information. It's clear for me to whom I show it, what kind of information I show it. And then it also creates a history and a transparency for all parties. And then that in order to create this verifiability, not only of the stakeholders involved in terms of the institutions, but also of the credentials issued, we need some kind of network which we can point to as a decentralized public key infrastructure. And that's where our Hyperledger Indy network comes into place, where we store the DIDs, a decentralized identifier, which basically points to a public key of the entity issuing the credential. And then if this entity signs the credential with the private key, it creates a public verifiability for all stakeholders involved. Currently, we use a permissioned network, which means permissioned write access and permissionless read access. That has mainly reasons to do GDPR compliancy. Because as soon as there's personally identifiable information on the network, it creates obviously GDPR problems. Okay, and then let's take a look into the network itself. We have conducted a lot of research In the middle, you see the different stakeholders which currently run a node. We're currently 13 node operators within the ecosystem. It's currently all in a test environment, so it's not on a productive state. So we're still conducting a lot of research and getting familiar with all the different components. And for now, we really have a good overview of what's needed, how we can deal with different problems, how we gonna, for example, deal with penetration tests and so on. So that's obviously a big research topic which we did in a competition phase. And here you see, for example, the regulatory review. That was something which we take a deeper look into. I mentioned the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, DSGVO in Germany. Already. And the other important regulation is the eIDAS regulation, so the Electronic Identification on Authorization Services regulation from the European Union, which basically defines a level of assurance, ein Vertrauensniveau in German, which states how much trust can you allocate to this information. And depending on the use case, there is different level of assurance required. You have a low, substantial, and high. And that's obviously something which we need to consider as well. Currently, we aim for level of assurance substantial. But then obviously cybersecurity aspects, interoperability aspects, freedom of operate aspects, so intellectual property rights are also important. And the whole topic of user acceptance and user experience optimization, user flows, all the different kind of stuff is very important because this kind of new technology and people are not used to really have the opportunity to store their information, their identity information on their own device. And so that's something which we need to conduct more research on, and but I think we are on a good way. When it comes to use cases, there, which you see on the right side on the blue, there is we have different clusters, so to speak, and I will talk about that in a second, where we have these clusters illustrated. But for now, let's take a look into the different applications. So basically, we have two different kind of applications. We have one for end users, which is the wallet, and we have one for institutions, which is the institutional agent. And here you see there for now are two wallets out of our consortia already available. This is the Lizzy wallet, which is from us at the Mine Incubator, and also the Isatos wallet, which is from the Isatos team. And we actually collaborated in the first stage, and then we developed this kind of wallet separately. And we also achieved interoperability already. So if you want to take your data and like put it from one wallet to another wallet, then this is possible. But we also are in deep contact with other, for example, American stakeholders or companies which provide these agents or end wallets and consumer wallets. And we're also interoperable with them as well. And then we have the institutional side. So for which companies can use to issue these credentials, to establish connections and request credentials, for example. And there we also offer that from Lizzy, and also Isatos offers that, but also Bosch, Daimler, and Siemens are working on a business partner agent, which is used to for the master data management. So the whole topic of supplier onboarding, if you a big company like these mentioned companies, and you have a lot of suppliers, and it's really quite a hassle to organize all the different data of the supplier. So when for the supplier, the bank account changes or the address changes for whatever reason, all these changes, these companies need to ensure that they have all, not only the right data, but all the supplies for example, the right certification to actually supply the certain equipment to the manufacturer. And that's where you can use this kind of business partner agent, which is actually open source. This is obviously a very important and big part of the project as well. And now let's take a deeper look into how the governance works. Governance is itself the establishment of a rule set and how to kind of run this legal entity, which then runs the network. And for now, we are in a test environment, so we think for now we don't need a legal entity. But obviously, once we get into a productive environment and productive stage of the network, we need a separate legal entity for that. And this entity should be act in the interest of the broad community. It should not be able to be bought, for example, from a very financial player, or from maybe even not a European entity. And it should also be European governance, right? We want that to have that the network is generally usable worldwide, but that it is a clear European governance with our values, with our understanding, and with a clear target to ensure that we have a regulatory conformity with all these EIDAS and GDPR regulations and so on. So this is really targeted for the European market, but it is usable worldwide. And for that, we plan to create or to found a European cooperative, so a Societas Cooperativa Europea. And this is basically a legal entity which is owned by all the stakeholders involved and needs to act in their interests. So it's a very democratic approach. And we also then have different roles in it, which is the steward, the endorser, the transaction author, and others. So the steward is basically the node operator, which is one server in the network. Endorser is a role which grants third parties the right access to write on a network. And the transaction author is then the third party which actually writes on the ledger, or actually says to the endorser, please write on the ledger. So yes, and then we have within the European cooperative, we have a dualistic approach, meaning that we have a supervisory board and a management board. So the execution and the supervisory, they are kind of separated as we kind of know it from the German market, or AG, the Aktiengesellschaft. So that you have a balance of powers, and you have not any entity which can just like push through it. And that creates obviously some rigidity, which is important, that we have that the processes can be trusted, but it also needs to be a little bit flexible. And we think that this approach is really the best solution to not only have the European scope of the whole thing, because then the regulation or the law in general is really optimized for every European player, and it's an equal level playing field for all involved parties in Europe. But also it can adapt to changes with the ecosystem, but it's not that it can just change rapidly and just overthrow from one day to another, because there's still a kind of a rigid control structure to ensure that all decisions are well done. And yeah, that's something we want to found then in the execution phase of the project. And now let's take a look into the use cases. Obviously, we need use cases to work for that. We have different clusters within different, which then contain different use cases. One cluster is, for example, the whole e-government sector, so the public sector, which includes the whole topics of certificates, of the service konto of North Rhine-Westphalia, where you can actually access then public service services via this kind of self-sovereign identity standard, but also, for example, that you have your pass on your eID on your phone in this wallet, and other use cases. We have the whole section of education, which I already mentioned, for example, diplomas, the whole topic of student ID and a student wallet, very driven by the Technical University of Berlin. We have the whole topic of financial industry, where we think that the standardization of bank data and the exchange of bank data is very important, and also the whole topic of qualified electronic signatures. In that case, among other, for example, KYC credentials and so on. So there we have different use cases as well. Then we already mentioned a little bit of IoT, the whole industry of the Internet of Things, with this master data management, whole supply chain management. We also collaborate with different stakeholder groups from Gaia X. And also, for example, that we have a certified product ID and so on. There are different aspects where this comes through in really handy. And then the whole topic of e-commerce, as well as mobility, that we have, for example, a smart checkout. You don't need to be registered in an e-commerce shop, but you can send the necessary information to whatever vendor you want to buy a certain product from, for example. And then obviously the topic of travel agencies, mobility as a service, and so on. So there are a lot of aspects there as well. And then we have the topic of identity access management, which means basically not only the physical access to, for example, a building, but also the digital access to a platform, for example, a university, which has a closed ecosystem for their students. And then we have also the whole topic of e-health. So when it comes to for example, telemedicine, to calling the doctor, that you can ensure is it really the doctor, and the doctor can also ensure is it really the person who says he's my patient, among other use cases. And obviously there are a lot of aspects which we need to take further into consideration. And then on the next slide, you see how we're gonna establish that. I also mentioned that the first like the 5 points which you see on top, but also one thing which we talk a lot about in our community is interoperability, meaning that you're able to use different technology stacks and switch from one vendor, for example, to another vendor. You can have different contexts within your use cases. So this is quite a lot of variety when it comes to interoperability. So for example, that we have the IDunion network and then an agent on top. And then this agent not only supports the IDunion network, which is specialized for European stakeholders, but maybe even for an American network or Asian network. But then on the other hand, you have you can also say, okay, I have the IDunion network, which I want to build on. Now I can see, okay, which kind of agent software I use. Do I use it from us, Lissi, Isatos, or the Bosch partner agent, or any other open source implementation which you build yourself? Like, it's up to you, right? It's an open ecosystem, and you can actually build on it. But it also implements the semantic interoperability, meaning that if I actually get issued a diploma in German, it creates these different attributes. And for example, the grade can be like a 1 or a 6. And maybe a 1 is very good in Germany, but in, I don't know, in Sweden, for example, it's very bad. I'm actually not sure how it is in Sweden, but as you might know, there are different standardizations of how we interpret this data which is written into these fields. So one might be very good here in Germany and very bad somewhere else, right? And they in the USA, they use letters for it. So this semantic meaning needs to be translated as well. And then we have the involvement of bodies, of public bodies and citizens. So that's very important for us as well, that we not just like just push technology without considering the actual people who use it, but instead like really work closely together with these different community stakeholders from the city of Cologne, for example, with the Stadt Langen, where we have a pilot use case and so on, to really get it into the hands and that get the right direct feedback from the people who are actually using it. And then we have also the generation of everyday relevance, meaning that it doesn't make any sense if you create a complicated technology which you can use maybe once a year, right? So it needs to be usable for a lot of different aspects, maybe in a public sector, in a private sector, and so on. So wherever you want to go, it should be usable. And that's what we want to create with our ecosystem approach, that we say, if you want to join, if you have a use case, then yeah, go for it. We will be happy to have you on board. And also the whole topic of cooperation. So there are a lot of different entities which do, for example, standardization, which represent certain industries and so on. And we have also a lot of contact with them as well to really ensure that all interests from all the different stakeholder groups are taken into consideration. And that's almost the last slide. Now we take but what is our roadmap? Obviously, it's a question here. And this kind of showcase digital identity competition, which is hosted by the German government, goes on for 3 years. So that's actually what we plan for. So we say in 2021, we want to incorporate this kind of legal entity, which then runs the network, so you can run in a productive environment. For now, as I said, we run in a test environment. And so we want to pilot, then obviously during the year, different use cases to get this experience, to refine these products, and get also these products, our software agents, in a productive stage. Some of them are already, some of them are in beta phase, and so on. So that's something which we will take a deeper look into 2021. In 2021, 2022, we then really have to ensure that we have all the legal contracts in place, all the different governance frameworks to ensure that we can run all that on a productive environment, but also the integration, for example, on more complex use cases or standardization protocols like the OpenID Connect protocol or the national eIDU solutions, which we have, for example, in Germany with the Optimus project. All these a little bit more complicated and regulatory complex topics are then addressed during the phase of 2022, 2023. And then 2023, obviously, we're going to champion the really difficult use cases, for example, the KYC credential use case, where we say there's a lot of regulatory environment which we need to address and which we need to take in mind when we want to execute such a complicated use case. And that's something which we will need time, which we will need to discuss with different regulators, and there might need some changes for whatever law. That's something which we need to see, something which we still have to define and have conversations about. So in the first phase, we rather have like a kind of touch the low-hanging fruit and get the non-regulatory cases which enable you to use it in an everyday scenario, and then over time we will try to really get into the difficult cases. And last but not least, what are our unique selling points? Why will IDunion succeed? So basically, we have already a different, quite a lot of variety in our use cases. There's 35, but it's actually over 40 already. So we get added like one use case per week. And we have also a lot of customer private data, which we can, as a consortium, then issue already, right? You need it's kind of a chicken egg problem. If you don't have the issuers, you don't really get the holders and the verifiers. Like, you need both to really jumpstart this ecosystem, and that's the reason why we really glad that this ecosystem exists, so we can really addressed it together and have already with our, for example, Bosch and Siemens and Commerzbank and IG Bank, we have a sustainable customers already, which can leverage this data to actually issue it to the customers, and they can then use it to go to another party and say, hey, I have this credential from this and this third party, please let me get that and that, right? And we have also a lot of citizens involved. So with the showcase regions, for example, the city Cologne, the city of Berlin, and so on, we address a lot of citizens directly on the ground, where we can say that's something where an everyday user can get into touch with it. And we have also a lot of investment here. So from our side, from all the stakeholders involved, we invested 15 around or more than 15 million over the next 3 years. With given that we hopefully that we have the government funding, means that we have over 30 million then in funding for this project. So this is not something which we take lightly. Obviously, it needs a certain amount to really get going. And we have a lot of different software which we do ourselves. So it's not something where we say, okay, we have an ecosystem, then we use in the end non-European software providers for that as well. Obviously, you do that, but we are making sure that we have software providers from the European Union as well, to ensure that data sovereignty is not only a buzzword, but also that we actually can live it. So much about that.
Yeah, Adrian, I wanted to say this was a load of information, and I know I have now I think last slide, so we can kick off the discussion, or you want to add something first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can add, but go forward you first, please, Adrian.
So from my side, no, I think I just said a lot. So
yeah,
for now, let's take a look what the questions are.
So okay. Usually our blockchain meetups are very like a lot of discussion and Q&As. Let's start with the, I think, like easier questions. So first of all, our community, if they want to know more about you, you have shown many use cases. You have shown there's a huge organization and organizational structure behind it. So what would you say is, for example, I'm interested in IoT, where to go to? Is there a specific page, or I have to go on the contact us slide? Like, it's maybe there are more specific ways to go in the details which you have shown.
Great question, and I would love to say yes, but for now we don't. We just hosted our website like 1 month ago and published it in English a couple of days ago. So, however, you find detailed information on our website, and you can contact us with the contact at idunion.org, and we will ensure that we forward the request to the right party. So, if you're interested, just shoot us an email, and we'll make sure that we will get that to the right contact person, which can help you for the use case in question.
So, but what about, like you mentioned, there are projects and initiatives already going on. Are they all closed, like closed groups, and they are, behind the bars and have to program and do the research? Or is it because it sounded to me very open and inclusive and collaborative? That's why I'm asking, like, if I'm really interested or the viewers are interested, how to contact fast and not go through a domain name and scroll and send 10 emails.
That's totally right, and I can totally understand that. Obviously, that's something where we want to be, and that we enable that. That's not something obviously we can just do from one week to another. It takes time to really get this process going. And for now, we were really busy with the whole the government to apply for the government grant took a lot of time. So what are we doing until April, when the official start of the execution phase starts then, is that we have these kind of clusters where then we address these use cases within the different stakeholders, and we want to make sure that these clusters are then accessible. So once we get further downstream the project, maybe in the next 2, 3, 4 months, we want to ensure that, so that you can actually say, okay, I'm interested in IoT, and then you can see, okay, what's the cluster, IT cluster doing, and you can actually directly contact them and then participate as well.
Okay, so let's assume there is a cluster which is going forward and it's already like going for open up to the public. If you look back to the projects and initiatives which you have seen in several clusters, what you will say will be the most impactful over the next 3 years?
I don't think that there's like a clear winner for these clusters, because it highly depends on the parties which then will build on the network and the ecosystem to find solutions. And maybe we'll find 100 different companies and ideas and use cases within the education space, and maybe none in the IoT space, because it's complicated. So for now, it's really difficult to say, and I think that will highly depend on the stakeholders and their motivation to actually build new solutions. But I'm pretty sure that all of the solutions and all the clusters will come forward with new ideas, new solutions, which actually create value for the ecosystem.
And when we are talking about the ideas and like the initiatives where the idea comes first, I mean, usually in ideas, there is a business model behind it. So this brings me to the question, like, what are the most profitable business models in the IDunion ecosystem so far, or maybe also for the next 3 years?
It's actually also a very good question, in terms of that it's a complicated question, which we don't really have an easy answer for. So our approach was not necessarily from the beginning to say we want to earn money with that, but rather like, there is a problem, let's find a solution and find a business case later. And that's the reason why we have ideas on how we're going to monetize, not only from a network perspective, but also from a use case and vendor perspective, right? These are different perspectives, which we then can say these different stakeholder groups have different business models itself. When we ask for the network, for now, we go with member fees, but we have other ideas to say that you have, for example, premium claims, where you can say if an issuer issues a valuable credential and some verifier asks for it, that the issuer actually gets money for it. Or the holder of the credential gets incentivized to share it, or to I don't know. So there are different incentive structures which we still take a deeper look into. For now, this is still a kind of research phase when it comes to the business model itself. We have ideas, and but for now, this is not something where we say we have the clear solution for. So that's something which we need to define. When it comes to the vendors, so the software applications, for example, us as Lisi or our friends from Isatos, then they have different target markets. They have different products which they can offer, and then it also depends on who you're addressing then with your product. What kind of product do you have? Do you have like a end consumer target market? Is it a B2B? Is it a B2C market, and so on? So this is highly then different as well.
Okay, so you mentioned already that there is the challenge to be focused enough or to find the focus. So let me just make this question up again. So in your opinion, what will be the biggest challenge for IDunion over the next 6 months and the next 2 years?
Okay, I think when it comes to challenges, but that's my personal view. I do lead the communication at IDunion, and I'm not the general project manager. But from my perspective, one of the biggest challenges which we face is to really get inclusivity. So as you said with this question already, like how to open up this ecosystem and so on. That's something which we need to ensure. It needs to happen, but it's not so easy done when it comes to all these like official stakeholders and so on. There's still some rigid structures, I would say. Where you cannot just say, okay, we open a Zoom session, let's see what happens. I think that's something which we need to address, where we need to find a solution for, and we need to kind of find ways where we can get feedback and get people to work with us and so on, and to make it easy for them to access these different kind of information calls and whatever we do. So that's something which we need to address. And over the longer perspective, I think the biggest challenge here is to really crack the chicken and egg problem, so that you see, okay, we have a critical mass of not only end users but also institutions which participate in the ecosystem, that we get it going. So that's something which we need to ensure that it not ends up with, I don't know, 30 use cases in a pilot stage, but actually that we say, okay, you can use it as an individual more or less every time in 200 different application and use cases, and it's really easy to use. So that's something where we want to be, for example, but obviously that's something which is not that easy.
Okay, so Ralf, before we come to the more technical questions, I want to ask if Adrian is okay to ask more technical questions, because you said you're in the communication direction more, or if we want to, I don't know, find a communication channel where, for example, the YouTube chat can address the questions. What do you think, Adrian?
Let's see. I have a technical background as well, so I might be able to answer.
Okay, so Ralf, do you have non-technical questions?
Yes, we have some in the chat, but I can start also with non-technical. Regarding interoperability, normally what I know is that the IDunion network is based actually on Hyperledger India and Arias. And in your slides, you said interoperability is very important. Means if IDunion supports VW3C DIT and verifiable credential standards, then you can interact with Microsoft Ion, on example, or maybe with other ones which protocols which support the universal resolver, on example, and the higher DITCOM protocols, which are actually in the early beginning phase of the standardization. My question is, do you have, as a consortium, done in the past interoperability tests or environment built up for other identity products, on example, for Microsoft Ion, or what I have done in together with Bosch, Siemens, and Daimler with Even Network, on example, also a Saxony company, a startup, and so on. Can you tell us a little bit more about interoperability?
Yes, for sure. So basically, we as main incubator, it was I think 2017 where we took a deeper look into the different identity frameworks which are available in order to really run this network. And you mentioned some of them. Obviously, Ion wasn't really there back then, but there were others which were available, and we conducted that that Hyperledger Indy would be most suitable to run that network, especially considering all the GDPR issues. And this for us was a really big point that we say we don't want any personal identifiable information, even not as hash, actually on the chain. And then we said, okay, Hyperledger Indy is the best one for that. And funny enough, the other stakeholders which are now major part or major stakeholders within the IDunion ecosystem came to the same conclusion as well. So they were working on Hyperledger Indy as well. And so it was actually a natural fit to collaborate and say, okay, let's test it together. Let's come up with a test network and so on. And so actually the IDunion test network is the second test network, or third even, which we have. I think it's even the third, and which runs for roughly 1 or 2 years already, and not the IDunion test network which we have right now, but we had networks before that already. So gradually we're gaining more experience on how to interact with the network and so on. So it was for us until now clear that Indy is the best way to work with that. But obviously, if things change, if there comes a better idea, for example, KRI, the key received entity received infrastructure.
Okay. Yeah.
Event received infrastructure, then and it has benefits which we say, okay, it makes sense to implement that, then that might change, right? Who knows what the future will bring. But we think that the network itself, the technology is not that important. Rather, what is important are the protocols used on the agent layer and between the agent communication. So for now, we use Hyperledger Areas for that, and it seems to be a very good fit, especially when it comes to the DITCOM protocol. And but obviously, there we need to ensure that we have then the interoperability aspects to other non-Indy based agents as well. So, for example, you mentioned Ion. That's not something which we have on a short-term roadmap. But obviously, as soon as we see that there is use cases and actually usage of both networks, then we say, okay, we need to make sure that we find a way how to address the interoperability to ensure it. But as long as there is no usage of one of either network, right, it doesn't make sense to say, okay, we need 100% interoperability before we even start to pilot use cases and to go deeper into actually usage. So I think usage here is a little bit more important than saying 100% interoperability. And then over time you can say, okay, now let's take a look at the 5 most promising players, for example, in terms of technology frameworks and how to make sure we got this interoperability.
Okay. Next question is, you have presented us 2 wallets. The Lisi wallet is the main incubator wallet, and from Esatos. And the question is this only planned for identity, these wallets, or should they extend it later on also for maybe digital assets and or cryptos?
So for now, they are really very much focused on the whole identity topic, which doesn't mean that might change in the future, right? Maybe we include payments, maybe include any other investment opportunity, whatever. I don't know. For now, I can obviously right now only speak for Lisi and not for Esatos. But for us at Lisi, for now, we're very much focused on the whole identity topic, but given our finance background as main incubator, we consider the finance aspects as well. And as soon as we think there's demand and actually as a good fit which we can offer, then why not? But for now, we have to ensure that the whole identity topic is running, and once it's running, then we can see what happens afterwards.
Okay. And another question, or maybe some questions, as of the vendor login, which he is very interested. Is it possible to make a shift to another vendor, or not, and not having to reissue all the credentials that have already been issued? This means if you are, or if you have as a human, on example, decided, or as a company, I will store my, or I will use my credentials self-sovereign in your one. Is it possible to go with my verified credentials and or with my keys to another vendor?
Yes, this is the short answer. And it's actually so, given, for example, the situation that you have a certain vendor and which you use currently as an institution in order to issue this credential and establish connections and so on. And then you can export this data and import into another agent. For now, that's not 100% possible. We work on that to ensure that it's working, because we think that's a very important aspect. So that's where we want to achieve, and then it would actually be possible that you have in parallel two agents, for example, from different vendors, because in the end it's all key management, and if you standardize key management enough, then you can use different vendors which use the same underlying technology framework and standards and protocols that you can actually use the vendor which we have alike. Obviously, when it comes to detail, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And for now, there's still a little work to be done to really achieve that 100% interoperability. But that's certainly something which we aim for and which we take into consideration when developing our products.
Mm-hmm. And another question is, what happens to a conditional student's diploma if all nodes of this Hyperledger blockchain decide to stop working?
If all nodes go down, then it's not possible anymore to verify any information issued. So this will then be a very bad case for all involved stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But on the other side, the diplomas, if they stored in the local wallet, then the owner itself can make later on another network a self-attestation, and hopefully he will find additional attesters.
I mean, you could also say, for example, if an entity says, okay, damn it, the network is down, then they could also publish their private key, the public key, and their decentralized identifier on their own website, for example, or in the DNS record. And then this will create then again this link between the entity and the identifier and the public key in order to make this verifiability happening again. We could also, as I said, also use the DNS infrastructure as a public key infrastructure. That will also be possible, but we think that a decentralized infrastructure brings certain benefits with it. That's the reason why we chose this kind of decentralized infrastructure. But what is actually not possible, if there's no public record which you can trust of the public key of the entity which issued the credential, then how is a third party which wants to verify this credential, which you still have as a holder, right? It's not possible to delete it. You hold it, but it's probably like this design with the private key. It's actually not possible anymore to verify it if there's no public key where you can actually do your public private key cryptography against, right? So this asymmetric cryptography needs the public key somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Yeah, I think the most of the questions which we had in the channel was answered.
Yeah, I guess so too, Ralf. I have to comment also, like my video camera broke, so I am here without picture, video, but yes, I agree, Ralf. We answered all the questions, and in WonderMe, let me confirm. No other.
Wait a moment. Here is a new question regarding costs. Is there a pricing or is there a business and pricing model planned for every identity? And maybe how much is a self-sovereign identity for a human, or maybe for a car? On example, if you imagine a car is a self-sovereign economy object, like an electric car or electric car or a taxi, and has an own wallet and decide with AI to run his own digital business. Do we have some pricings?
Pricing is an interesting and important aspect, and obviously it's not only it's very difficult to charge the end consumer. Why it might be possible on a technical side, it doesn't really make sense because a user is not really not gonna pay for like a login credential. It's not gonna happen. If I do a single sign-on for whatever website at a forum, I'm not gonna pay for it. Why should I? And so for the end consumer, it's highly likely that there won't be any costs involved. It's actually easier than to charge any institution or business involved. But then we're coming back to the issuer and the holder. And traditionally, like the question is like, who creates the demand for it in the first place, right? It's the verifier. They want to know the information. For them, verified information are very important and very valuable. But for now, due to the asynchronic structure of our ecosystem, we cannot charge the verifier, because we never know who's the verifier. And like we know actually the issuer, for example, if the Technical University of Berlin issues a diploma and I receive this diploma and now I go to whatever company to apply for a job and I show my credential there, the university never knows who I show my credential to or when I show it to. Like they just don't know. And then because the verifier can just access all the data, and I as an individual, I transport my data and give it to them if I want to. Mm-hmm. And this creates the problem that it's really hard to charge the verifier. So the idea is to maybe charge the issuer. So for example, that create costs to write your public key or your DID in that case on the network. Or if you write schemas on the network and so on. So writing rights for the network then would be charged. This is an option which we consider right now, but it's highly unlikely that the end consumer will face any costs which like say that you have to pay for it when it attributes whatever. Highly depends on use case. Obviously, if you get a driver license, you still have to pay for it, right? But doesn't mean that you have to pay because of the underlying technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and regarding business models, I can imagine that if a company decides, on example, my former employee Supply On. This is a supply chain management platform for more than 100,000 companies worldwide in more than 70 different countries. If they decide to say, I will develop a service identity as a service, on example, then this means this is an identity provider which services or provides identity management for other companies, on example, on behalf of. Is this model technical possible? First question. And what do you think? Can such a company earn money with identity as a service from a self-sovereign identity aspect or view?
I want to rephrase the question to ensure that I understand it correctly. So I think the question is that that this kind of service can be offered from a third party as kind of a cloud service, right? As a software as a service package. You meant the supply chain management platform. That could be very much the case. I was talking today to one of the startups in Berlin, which also takes into consideration all the different aspects, and they want to find a solution, for example, for tenants and people who have flats and want to rent them out, and they want to provide a platform which kind of particularly addresses this use case. And then they could, for example, charge the person who rents out because they need the data, they are the verifier, and they may need to ensure, like they ensure that the tenant has like all the necessary data and it gets transported to the verifier, and they can charge for the service. So whatever use case there is, and then you can say I myself act as a technology provider in between. Maybe the customer has its data on his own wallet, maybe it's somewhere in the cloud, however he likes it. But in the end, then I can say I go kind of in between these two parties, and then to address specifically address this use case, and then maybe charge a commission or a certain percentage or whatever. So obviously that's possible.
Mm-hmm. We have another question in the chat, or from the chat. Are you providing as IDunion a service like an agent-to-agent communication in a RISE environment? On example, API, cloud service, or something like that?
I'm not 100% sure what the question is, or like.
Yes, maybe we have not the possibility to directly ask here, but it's the last in the chat in YouTube from Orgon Oroch. And I can imagine that the business partner agent normally can support, this is what I know, can work business-to-business transaction or a point-to-point combination. They can use this.
So IDunion itself as an ecosystem and consortia, we don't provide any software. We provide an ecosystem and a network as an infrastructure, but we go with the approach of co-opetition, which means like cooperation and competition at the same time, which means that we collaborate, for example, Lissi and Isatos, we could kind of be considered a competitor, but on the same time we say it makes totally sense to work together on that, because otherwise we like, how do we get this ecosystem going? And so we work together on an infrastructure ecosystem side, but then on the agent side, then there's competition, and this is up to the free market and up to innovative entrepreneurs to come up with good solution, good agents to suit the needs of the market. Then with when it comes to software agents.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question from my background. You said before, IDunion is one of the winner of the competition of the secure digital identities of the Federal Ministry of Economy. And I know this foundation. I have also Berater, what does it mean?
Consultant.
A consultant for Ideal. This is also a winner of the competition. And I know that we have 3 or maybe 4 different consortia which work together and win always 50 million of euros. And one of the base requirements from the foundation was or is that every solution, every use case, or every identity product which will be offered in the foundation projects should be interoperable with other services and identity products for other consortiums. This means this is a complete cross interoperability requirement. And I know that the foundation duration is 3 years, and in this 3 years will be different projects founded. And what do you think, or how can this interoperability requirement can be validated or confirmed? Is it necessary to build up, maybe as IDunion or as an external university, an identity innovation or integration lab which attests the interoperability or the fulfillment of the existing standards which will be developed and standardized over the next 3 years? is it necessary to have such an independent, maybe a certification organization, or how do you solve this problem? What's your opinion?
So when we take a look into the project selected at for the Showcase Secure Digital Identities competition, we see that, for example, IDunion is a SSI, a self-sovereign identity ecosystem only, right? We don't really have any other protocols which are traditionally used implemented. But obviously, we, for example, have Yes as well, and they're very much included in the OpenID Connect world, which is a very much used standard in order to, for example, do single sign-on activities. And generally, it's a good approach to say we have maybe the traditional side of things, and we have the new kind of things. With SSI is a very new concept, and with a traditional sector which has traditional or very much established protocols. And obviously you need to bring them together. You cannot just say, okay, we don't do this only or this only. In the end, you have to enable both. And you also need to enable the decentralization, but also centralization. And then in the end, the institutions or the people can choose whatever which solution suits their needs best, right? So in the end, it won't be all decentralized or all centralized, but in the end, we will have a combination. And that's the case why interoperability makes perfect sense and is super important, because without this kind of interoperability, we won't be able to bridge the gap between the two extremes. And when it comes, I mean, the problem about interoperability is that there are a lot of different aspects of it. And if you ask 10 experts of the identity ecosystem and ask them what interoperability means to them, you will get 10 different answers, because maybe some see it from a technical side, some from a legal side, some from a use case side, and so on. So there's so many aspects which you need to take into consideration that it's really complicated. And as you mentioned, this kind of lab or strategic approach in terms of what kind of requirements do we have, and what kind of solutions are right there, what kind of interoperability are already offered. That's a really good idea in general. We need to have that so that we can keep track of that and make sure that we reach the target. And for now, one of the really good things which we think is needed are public test suits. So agent implementations which are open source, which you can test against, right? Which are not vendor specific. This is very important to ensure that you have a common understanding what it actually means to implement these standards, because having a standard alone doesn't necessarily mean that you have interoperability, because somebody interpreted it differently than maybe another vendor, right? So testing suites, open source testing suites are they're really important aspects.
Yeah, maybe there is also an interoperability working group available on the DIF Foundation, Digital Identity Foundation. I take part sometimes or every 2 weeks on this standardization working group, and it's interesting from my perspective, but I think we need other independent, maybe organization for Europe. This is more only on a technical layer, but we need ESIF or anything else maybe.
We actually have the ESIF lab, and the ESIF lab is primarily concerned around interoperability. So I think that's a very good approach, and one of the initiatives we already follow. But also obviously the different working groups in Trust over IP or the Decentralized Identity Foundation are very valuable to us as well.
Do you see a business chance if a startup, public-private startups, comes and says, I will be the certification lab for DITs and self-sovereign identity from a technical perspective? What do you think?
I don't see any business case, to be honest, because that's something, I mean, it's something which most of the time is get with public funding, right? And this is not a sustainable business. So I would not say that this is a business case.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see that we don't have additional question in the channel. And I have also asked all my question or in our chats and so on. Yeah, Adrian, it was very interesting, and I think, or I hope, hopefully, we all hope that decentralized identities and self-sovereign identities and verifiable credential will have a good future, so that we will have a chance to work and to that we will be in the future not so depending on the central identity providers like Facebook, like Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, and Google, and so on or Twitter. Yeah.
I would actually not call them identity providers, but rather authentication providers, because they don't provide an identity; they provide an authentication service. But you're totally right with the problem that we have currently with centralized platforms like Facebook and Google, which provide this kind of single sign-on service.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Adrian, for your participation. And I hope that we can go forward now with, and thank you for your participation. And yeah, do you have some last, maybe greeting words to our community?
Yes, I got a shout out, and if you have an interesting case, a use case, which you where you think decentralized identity or a self-sovereign identity is a good fit, then just to tag us in Twitter. IDunion _SCE is our tag, and we will take a look and see if that's a good use case. We would love to hear about that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we go forward, Adrian, thank you. And on the end of our blockchain meetups, we have normally open discussions, or maybe we are asking always what topics are interested or for next meetups. Arno, can you go forward with the next slide? I have prepared some topic suggestions.
So the slide should be open, and Adrian, I also want to thank for the really nice presentation. So, I mean, I want to add maybe that this was kind of the second time that we were talking about SSI, like how to get your identity self-sovereign or have the self-sovereign identity. And so far, IDunion looks good, bright, white, like it's a big organization, a lot of projects. So I agree on that, Ralf. Let's see what we get, in real life, to see if there's a Facebook killer or some other killer applications or maybe killer platforms. Let's see. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and now at the end today, here we have some topics for upcoming meetups. Maybe you can make a vote, you can write announcements or maybe opinions on our meetup channel. And what are the most interesting topics? Ethereum 2, what's new? Validation services for Chainlink. Here we have T-Systems on board. They are a validation. They are providing validation nodes for Chainlink, or maybe blockchain in China, blockchain service network, much more details. I have actually very good connections built up in the last week to the Chinese blockchain service network, or DeFi, decentralized finance, very deep, very comprehensive. I think Johannes, on example, from EdPar, he's one of our organization members. can have here all zero layer 2 technologies in Ethereum, zero knowledge rollups, optimistic rollups, or yeah, other topics. Here in the chat we see DeFi comprehensive. Are there any questions that you maybe already have? This is an offering regarding DeFi I see in the channel, and Ethereum improvement 1559. Yeah, we can collect them, and hopefully the next meetup, or the date for the next meetup is 3rd of March, means in 4 weeks. It's planned, but actually it depends on your feedback, what is most needed. And we can offer different things. And I think, or I suggest regarding the feedback, what I see here, that the next meetup should be a presentation of decentralized finance. This is increasing, is very interesting, and hopefully Johannes has time and can provide us a very comprehensive presentation on decentralized finance. Okay. Yeah, are there some other feedbacks in the channel? Please let us know. And I think the next meetup will be take place completely as a Zoom meetup, so that everybody can get real feedback with audio and video. And yeah, here we have all the suggestions. Zero knowledge proofs, wie tickt das technisch, or how does it run technically? And we will collect all these things. But I hope, I think DeFi is very interesting, so we will announce this in the next week. What is a topic, hopefully decentralized finance for the next meetup. The next meetup will take place as online, as we don't know. Is it possible regarding the lockdown that we can meet us physically each other in one room? Actually, therefore we plan to run this meetup also as an online meetup, but yeah. Arno has sent here all an announcement. Next online meet will be soon announced as usual under, yes. Okay, I said it before. Okay. If we don't have other feedbacks, then thanks for your time, and hopefully it was interesting, and you can see our meetup over on YouTube. It's available under the channel, and you will see us hopefully in 4 weeks. Bye bye, and thank you so much for your participation.